Hello, everyone. My name is Autumn Hadley, and for my project, I decided to focus on the management of autoimmune disease during the COVID-19 pandemic. This was because I have a friend that struggles dealing with an autoimmune disease, and I wanted to gain the opportunity to view the pandemic from her perspective and see the difference in her struggles. I also felt it would provide a unique voice to the current situation. I felt that the following quote from the novel The Plague by Albert Camus embodies the ongoing theme of my presentation. In this respect, our townsfolk were like everybody else, wrapped up in themselves. In other words, they were humanists. They disbelieved in pestilences. A pestilence isn't a thing made to man's measure. Therefore, we tell ourselves that pestilence is a mere bogey of the mind, a bad dream that will pass away. But it doesn't always pass away. And from one bad dream to another, it is men who pass away, and the humanists first of all, because they've taken no precautions. This displays the issue we currently face with the global pandemic. It has been over a year now, and it has continued to stand its ground regardless of our want for it to simply be a thing of the past. As COVID-19 continues to be a constant factor in our day-to-day lives, many problems have arisen. One being that the many unknown variables, the medical management, and the choices of others has made it difficult for those with autoimmune disease to navigate their environment during the COVID-19 pandemic. Autoimmune diseases affect the way the body is able to defend and recover from pathogens, infections, and diseases that may seem minuscule and unimportant to the average person. Due to this, those with autoimmune disease have grown to constantly worry about the cleanliness of their environment and exposure to outside sources. According to the article, Systemic Autoimmune Diseases, Anti-Rheumatic Therapies, COVID-19 Infection Risk, and Patient Outcomes, it was articulately stated that autoimmune diseases are characterized by intrinsic immune alterations, which may lead to chronic inflammation in multiple organ systems. The diseases themselves and many of their treatments are associated with increased risk for severe infections. It has been explained that during the global pandemic, those individuals with autoimmune disease should avoid commonplace activities, such as attending large gatherings and even skipping out on hugs and handshakes. It is important to consider that these routines that were foreign to us before the pandemic were already familiar to some of those with diseases such as this. They may be more consciously aware of their exposure to germs in their daily environment, and the pandemic has elevated this awareness. For example, I interviewed a freshman here at the University of Utah named Audrey Pack. She is someone who battles an autoimmune disease known as eosinophilic esophagitis. As an overview, according to the Mayo Clinic, eosinophilic esophagitis is a chronic immune system disease in which a type of white blood cell builds up in the lining of the esophagus. This buildup is due to a reaction of foods and can cause extreme inflammation and intensive damage. Along with this, it can lead to poor weight and growth and can cause abdominal pain. Audrey has explained that many don't understand the risk of contracting COVID-19 and how it would affect her. She reiterated the fact that it has been difficult to have the people you love not understand why you're doing what you're doing, and kind of losing friends because of it when it's something you can't control. Like, I didn't choose to have a super weak immune system. She's been strict throughout the pandemic and has lost friends because of being cautious about who she hangs out with and where she goes. Additionally, she reiterated the idea that the way her body responds to infection is completely out of her control. With the COVID-19 pandemic in mind, the choices you make have the potential to affect not only you, but the others around you. While wearing a mask may seem unimportant to some, it is crucial to protect those like Audrey. She detailed how her and her family wouldn't leave the house for anything at the start of the pandemic, but that it was hard to keep friends and keep connected with people on the outside world that weren't respecting the same guidelines as her. She echoed the fact that it was difficult to handle when people would insult her for having pre-existing conditions, and even talking to people openly saying that what she was doing is mindless and dumb. It was said in the book, The Plague, that all I maintain is that on this earth there are pestilences and there are victims, and it's up to us, so far as possible, not to join forces with the pestilences. This quote expresses the concept that we must join together and care for one another rather than add to the problem. It is paramount to the idea of respecting others during this time. We may not always know what is going on behind the scenes. Autoimmune disease itself can be considered an invisible illness, and the struggle can't always be seen from the outside. While we can't control the choices of others, what we can do is control what we do and make conscious, educated decisions. All things considered, the choices you make can have a serious impact on others, such as those with immune disorders, respectively. It is widely known that there are no absolutes in healthcare. Everyone responds differently to things, such as treatment and diseases, and so there is no singular or best path to follow. As COVID-19 hit like a brick wall, many healthcare professionals were scrambling for answers and solutions. It was originally believed that those with autoimmune diseases were going to be some of the most at risk during the pandemic. Treatment for those individuals going forward was muddy, but data supported that they remain on their immunosuppressive therapy to regulate their immune system. A quote that emulates this states, "Rheumatologists and infectious disease specialists should be working together in this epidemic as clear data are not available, thus making recommendations speculative." This reveals the various unknown variables and how difficult navigating the choppy waters of the pandemic has been for many. We are living at a peak moment for the advancement of science, and with daily discovery, it is evolving right in front of us. On account of COVID-19 being so new, much still has yet to be brought to light. This photo of Audrey shows ways she enjoys life, like playing tennis during the pandemic, even with all of this in mind. It has also been explained that a weakened immune response can lead to the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines and has been observed in patients with autoimmune diseases. A cytokine storm, which is an immune overreaction, is a common denominator in those that experience severe COVID-19 infections. This reveals how those with autoimmune disease are in a lose-lose situation, where they are at a higher risk of both contracting coronavirus and experiencing life-threatening symptoms. Audrey explained that if I got the coronavirus, I would definitely be at high risk. I would probably have to be hospitalized, and I don't think it would end well. This gives us a glance into the daily worries and fears that can consume those in situations like hers. The persistent threat to their and many others' health can be overwhelming and foreign, especially when the prospect of severe ramifications lies around the corner. There are additional risks that can be involved when dealing with specific autoimmune diseases. Audrey Pack explained that many of those with her specific autoimmune disease are responding negatively to the vaccine. She recalled that the majority of people with her disease have had moderate to severe allergic reactions. She explained that there is only one brand that is least likely to give her an unwanted response or even the possibility of anaphylactic shock. She is always upbeat and positive about her situation, though, and joked that when she gets the vaccine, she'll bring her EpiPens with her. Might I add that her EpiPens are painted and covered in gems and glitter. This story can be used as an inspiration to help us stay motivated and hopeful through the tough times. In addition to decorating her EpiPens, she always enjoys wearing colorful fun masks, as seen in this photo. On a similar note, many comorbidities are present along with rheumatic diseases, also known as autoimmune and inflammatory diseases. And this can include hypertension, lung disease, cardiovascular disease, and chronic renal insufficiency. Having the presence of comorbidities can add to the outcome of how they respond to sickness and COVID-19 specifically. It is essential to recognize that many of those with autoimmune diseases live a reality in situations such as this, and their body handles viruses differently, not only in part to their immune disease, but also due to these other factors. This once again reveals the complexity of the problem at hand and why many had to stick to such strict quarantine procedures. Audrey detailed that seeing kids her own age still going out and her herself living more of a life that those older than her would was very difficult. Although she knew that in the long run, it was important to face the reality of the situation and protect her and her family. There are many that are in similar scenarios, and the harsh consequences are all too real. The many unknown variables presented have brought confusion to those with autoimmune disease and how to specifically handle the pandemic going forward. All in all, it was asserted that, in the final analysis, the point that ties it all together is that based on the available data at present, any conclusions would be unsafe and should be seen with great caution. This encompasses the overarching theme of the bounds of unanswered questions and variables. The many divided viewpoints can add stress to an already stressful situation, but many continue to remain hopeful. As I discuss the concept of being hopeful, I want to reflect on the myriad of ways that have been utilized to cope with the global pandemic. In many respects, mental health is just as essential as handling the physical symptoms of autoimmune diseases. Audrey Pack recalls the many ways she has successfully done this. She has remarked that during COVID-19, she is taken at baking and spends a lot of time with her dog, Ellie. It is important that we also find outlets to release stress and promote well-being. Another key concept has been that the choices of others can have a significant impact on those with autoimmune disease. I asked Audrey why she chose to live on campus, knowing the possible risks, and she provided a very insightful response. She explained that, I didn't think that the risks would be too big, and I don't really think that they have been. And I think that the only person that I really interact with enough and could get something from is my roommate. We wear masks everywhere. And even though there is a pandemic, I still wanted to get the college experience. I felt like staying at home would do just as much harm to my mental health as taking the risk and going out to college would. In reality, Audrey should have just as much as an opportunity to experience college and daily life as anyone else, which gives us a personal perspective to why your choices matter in the pandemic. If it weren't for social distancing and masks, Audrey would not be able to live on campus and enjoy life the same way. For example, this is a photo of Audrey and her roommate, Brittany. They enjoy going to places like Target or any place where there is an excuse to be out and about. Overall, the global pandemic has provided greater insight into some of the daily struggles of those with autoimmune disease and how they have been heightened during this time. The medical management, the array of unanswered questions, and the consequences from the choices of others has cultivated a rocky environment for them as a whole. The plague ties it all together effortlessly when it was expressed. They were in a rather odd state of mind where, without having fully accepted in themselves the surprising events in which they were caught up, they did obviously believe that something had changed. However, many still hoped that the epidemic would end and that they and their families would be spared. As a result, they did not yet feel any sense of obligation. For them, the plague was only an unpleasant visitor, which would leave one day as it had entered. That is the end of my presentation, and I would like to thank Audrey Pack for allowing me to interview her and contributing insightful and meaningful thoughts and stories on her personal experience in the pandemic. And this is my works cited. Thank you, everyone.